if you was going to supercharge it, I would probably...
Hey there, welcome to BarryTsGarage. We have another episode of Ask Ed, and this is where you get to ask your questions in the comments, and we get Ed's opinion. Hi, Ed.
Hi, good morning. Good
morning.
Afternoon, I guess.
I guess it's afternoon this time.
I don't know. It really don't make any difference if it's morning or afternoon.
Not too much, no.
As long as we're having fun.
That's right. We've already had some fun. We've seen a lot of different friends today come by.
Yeah, we did. We had a good day today.
So that's pretty good, and I'm going to have to ask you later. I looked up that Rochester mechanical injection system.
Yeah.
Turns out it's 63 to 65 was when that particular one was used. That was a Corvette setup, wasn't it?
Yes.
That seems pretty rare. Is that a pretty rare injection?
It is rare.
Okay.
It's really rare.
Okay. Well, before we get to the questions, my question is, how did you get that? How did you come about having one of those? You want to tell that story? How did you get it?
No.
Okay.
Yes, a woman came by in 1970 something in my shop, and she had some car parts.
Okay.
In the back, I wanted to know if I wanted to buy them. It belonged to her son, but possibly, I don't know. I didn't question that.
Okay.
But she had, so I went out there and she had that fuel injection, and even the nuts and bolts and the thermostat housing and everything for it.
Wow.
So I says, yes, I'd like to buy it. What do you want for it? So we talked a little bit, and I bought that unit for $175.
Okay. What all was in the box? Was the distributor with it?
Yes. Oh, everything. Again, all the intake bolts and the thermostat and the bolts for that, and everything was in there. For that.
Wow. So you've just been looking for a Stingray to put it in by now, I guess.
Yeah, well, just whatever. I think that's 55 years ago.
Wow. Wow. And as far as you know, it works fine. Everything's good.
Works fine, yeah.
Huh.
I may put it on a car here. I have a Ninja sitting over here that a Corvette motor with the 9-inch balancer or something, 8-inch balancer on it and stuff, and I may just, if I get caught up here a little bit, I may fix that motor and put that injector on and start it up and running.
Now, is that designed for a 327?
It's 327.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Always there's a surprise
There's always
in a
some
box.
kind of something going on here.
Yep.
Yeah. Right now, I don't think I think about selling it once in a while, but I probably not. I won't sell it for a little while.
Yeah, you still want to hang on to it a little longer.
A little longer, yeah.
See if you get to your project.
Yeah, it'd be fun to get it running and then start up and run it.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, that'd be for this, yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. That would be great. Well, we had, let's see, the first question I've got here is from Warren. He got a grin back when we talked about the Ford 300 6-cylinder. We had a little controversy with the 300 outrace a 292 Chevy straight six.
Yes.
And you said it did. And he had a chuckle because he said, I replaced 3 292 long blocks due to the hole in the left side adjacent to the oil pan referred to as door number 5.
On a 292 Chevy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Was that your experience? Does it often fail in the same place, or did you deal?
I never had one fail. Right there it sets.
Okay, there it is.
That's the one we used to race in a half-ton truck, and I never had crankshaft problems, but the flywheel kept coming loose.
Okay.
And even I had a guy from back east, and maybe in Missouri somewhere, a good friend of ours that raced in our circuit, race circuit all around the United States, and he had one with 6 carburetors on it and a dragster. It was actually a little altered, like a T-bucket.
Okay, yeah.
And I made some things for him on that one, but he had the motor on a slide. So after about 4 runs, he could slide it forward and tighten the flywheel. Now we've done so many things with this. We've safety wired the flywheel.
Yeah.
We've countersunk it and put Allen bolts in it, and it still came loose.
How in the world?
Even the automatic transmission flywheel came loose. And somewhere in the harmonics and the balance of that motor.
Must be.
We balanced it the best we could and changed different things in and stuff. And whatever we did, and everybody I know that raced the 292 Chevy 6-cylinder and drag racing and messed with it can't keep the flywheel tight.
Okay.
Even we got 2 dowel pins in this.
That's
trying to keep it straight. It never came off because we kept checking it.
Yeah, he said he didn't get around to the flywheel coming loose because he forgot to take his foot off the gas and when he shifted and forgot to shift.
You forgot to shift and got a big hole inside
Yeah,
the motor.
door number 5.
Okay.
Chris has a question. He said the bushings on the Turbo-Hydromatic 350, that's a transmission, not the Chevy engine, were a bit on the narrow side and the subassembly was heavy for their size, and the old trick was putting a C6 front pump bushing. It sounds like he changed the subject there. Have you ever moved bushings from one transmission?
Yeah, we sometimes had we put a Buick Dynaflow.
Okay.
Bushing was wider than the little narrow one. I think that was maybe in the 350.
Okay.
The front pump drum where the torque converter ran.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and put a Dynaflow, a Buick bushing in it instead of the little narrow one that came with it.
Really?
That's the only one I ever changed in an automatic.
Uh-huh. So you agree with Chris that the bushing was on the thin side on the front?
Oh yeah, real narrow, like a half inch. And we put a bushing in it was like an inch.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's, yeah, you match right up.
So many of those bushings and transmissions is a common thing. The same engineer made it, and they made one bushing and they made something else, but they were all the same size. It wasn't, they were either an American thread too.
Okay.
It was like 1 3/4 shaft. Well, it took a bushing right over that for the same Buick and whatever else transmissions they were making. So they didn't make something really weird in a bushing.
Well, they were
So a lot of common bushings and common sizes
yeah.
in those transmissions, yes.
Yeah, okay. And
Yeah.
they're probably real hesitant to make a special bushing. They want
Yeah,
to do
they
something.
would be nuts to do that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, Christopher says he's curious about springs on a governor on the 700 R4. So we have a couple transmission questions here. Christopher says, any advice on swapping the weights and springs on a governor to change the shift points after gear swap on a
700 R4?
Yeah.
Well, that's the throttle cable. You can change that, shift points with that.
Is that right?
That's the cable going to the carburetor.
Okay. So you can change it with that and not worry
Yes.
about anything else.
Yeah, without worrying about anything else. But then the other ones that didn't change, a little bit like a Turbo 400. Then we changed the spring
Okay.
and the governor. So
I
it didn't fly out so fast. If it didn't fly out so fast, it wouldn't shift. So you change your shift point that way, and it's easy to get that out of there.
So would you put lighter weights in?
Yeah, lighter springs.
Springs.
Yeah,
Okay.
shift quicker then.
I see.
Or whatever, put heavy springs in and it'd shift later.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a spring with just a weight.
Yeah.
Governor weight, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good. Well, there you go, Christopher. We got straight to the answer on that one.
Yeah. I think a shift kit comes with different springs.
Ah,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah.
All right. Stormin Norman says he'd like to ask Ed just what you remember. What is the highest horsepower Pontiac engine? Do you remember he's suggesting the 421 Super Duty or maybe the,
That's the best engine they ever made.
oh, you like
As
that
far as
one.
power. That car was fast. That's the wide track cars, Pontiac wide tracks with aluminum wheels and stuff on them.
That's right, those 8-lug wheels.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, did you like that better than the 455?
Yeah, 455 was a bigger motor that didn't really, it's like a 454 Chevy. It didn't go near as good as the 427. And that 455 didn't go near as good as that 421.
No kidding.
But that factory with the 2 4-barrels and big cast headers, so that was a fast car. A Royal Pontiac out of Detroit was racing those in where I came from, around Toledo and Detroit and Indianapolis.
Okay, so those guys racing those Pontiacs, what kind of horsepower do you think they ended
I
up?
have no idea what they did because we didn't know them that well. We were just some young kids.
Okay.
Messing around. They wouldn't, if we asked them, they wouldn't tell us anyways.
That's right. And if they did tell you, they'd lie to you.
They'd probably lie anyways, yeah.
Right.
I remember we had in those times of that Royal Pontiac, and I think I went and told them, I said, you got some problems here. They had brand new Beetle Air tires.
Okay.
Now that was a tire that was sold out of a normal tire store. It was a Beetle Air with like an 820-15 white wall.
Okay.
It had 2 grooves in it, and the grooves were about 1/4 inch wide, but the rubber was made out of soft rubber.
Uh-huh.
And I think you could even spin them. Our cars wouldn't even couldn't get us to spin them unless maybe in the rain or something. We
So
get
sticky.
And even those, in the rain, it got a bite. But this Royal Pontiac was I think in Toledo, and he made a couple runs, and I noticed the last run he made, he had something stuck on his tire. So I want to tell him, you got something stuck on the rear tire. And come to find out it was bald. He'd ordered all the way to the cords.
They had worn through it?
It run through the cord. It had a soft spot in it, and that was the cord sticking out. I says, you got something stuck on your tire, a piece of paper. And he went back and looked at it. Hey, thanks a lot. He says, I didn't know that tire was bald.
It was gone, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. He wore that tire out that fast. I'm sure when he came to the track, it was brand new.
Yeah. Okay, now just to finish up on the Pontiac, what do you think about taking a 389 and doing a stroker kit on something like that?
I don't know that.
You haven't done
I
those?
never did that.
Yeah.
We never had. Again, those cars, you start doing that and it's expensive.
Yeah, it is.
And we didn't do it because we messed around with the Ford, small block Ford, and the small block Chevy like everybody else did. And once in a while we dipped into the 454 strokers and the big block Chevys, but Pontiacs were way too expensive for what we did.
Okay.
So.
All right, well, Bob has a question. Do you happen to know, now you showed us in a previous video the Chrysler push button, and we talked about the mechanical connection to the transmission from those buttons.
Yeah.
But our friend Bob wants to know, do you know anything about the Edsel? They had a push button in the
I don't
wheel.
know, in the center of the steering column.
Yeah, in 58.
I do not know anything about that.
Uh-huh.
I think it was more, I don't know if it was cable driven or electric, and I think it was more electric.
I believe that's right.
Yeah, they were electric.
Yeah.
Some kind of electric solenoids.
Yep.
And we talked about that before, and I have no idea. I never messed with the transmission, how it shifted that, turned from the buttons electrically, wires going down to it, because you turn the steering wheel and it would have wound it up. No, it wouldn't have. It might have stayed with the column and the steering wheel turned around them.
It might
So
have
if you turn them over here, reverse is way over here and low is way over here. So I think they stayed solid. Common sense, again, I never played with it.
Yeah.
Common sense, they sat still and the steering wheel turned around them.
Yeah. Well, in any case, I have a feeling you're right that was some electrical thing, but you never obviously had to repair one.
I've never had to repair one or do anything with it. Yeah.
Okay.
That was probably that rare because we didn't.
Yeah, they weren't that many.
Yeah.
I think they got out of that pretty quick.
Yeah.
All right, Richard, he loves the show. He says he's a very faithful follower. What do you think about adjusting the lifters after 11,000 miles or so? What's a good interval for adjusting lifters?
I would say you should play with them, especially he says he's got a Corvette.
Yeah.
I would play with them after about every 10,000 miles or something.
Okay.
I would think the hydraulics, they say that they can adjust anything, but a hydraulic lifter has almost a quarter of an inch of play in the lifter.
Okay.
The hydraulic floats in that oil.
Yeah.
So anywhere in that area is okay. Mm-hmm. You don't hold the valve open, the valve closes all the time, and you got the same compression. Wherever you adjust the valve, you just have the same compression and everything else.
Okay.
But I kind of like the idea, if he had a solid lifter, then the first solid lifter camshaft was the early Corvettes. Even in 57, had solid lifters in them, and the adjusted valves 10 and 18.
Okay.
Yeah, so they was pretty tight on the intake. Mm-hmm. But that camshaft would idle at 500 RPMs.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Then they came out with a bigger camshaft where you adjust the valves at 30-30. Mm-hmm. And so that camshaft, I think, caused all kinds of problems. Oh. As far as I know, that I would never use that camshaft in anything. But I think we bought those camshafts for about $25, brand new from Chevrolet.
Okay.
But they had a lot of duration and no lift, so they didn't go anywhere.
Right.
So we still see them today.
Yeah.
Once in a while.
Somehow they got kind of notorious or famous.
Yeah, they were famous for some reason, but they didn't perform at all.
Right.
Yeah, not what we expected. I think General Motors, I have to go back and look at, General Motors might have liked that camshaft and designed it for that when they were road racing that Corvette.
Oh, okay.
I think back in those days, General Motors had those Corvettes that were trying to road race them, and back and forth and stuff. And that's what that camshaft was probably designed for, not drag racing like we were doing.
Right, and that would explain why you.
They had to have some kind of reason for that cam because they weren't dumb people.
Right.
They had a lot of good stuff, but
it probably was a different application.
Some kind of application that we didn't like?
Right.
Okay, good.
Fair enough.
Good question.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so David writes in, kind of likes the Chevy 307 for among the small displacements. He said, would you compare the 307 to the 305? Which one's better and why are they different?
I would run the 305.
Okay,
Yeah, because it has a longer stroke.
okay,
It's got the same stroke as 350
okay,
and just smaller pistons, and put some good compression in it.
okay,
And that's what I want. I would choose. I wouldn't choose the 307. I
okay.
think the 307 was trying to get some mileage because that might have been that little Malibu car.
Yep.
It had some of those 307s in them for some reason.
Okay, this is going to be interesting. Rod is saying, he says he's trying to decide between building a stroker or building a cleaver. And we know the cleaver is the Cleveland-Windsor combination Ford. And I don't know very much about, other than that's what it is. I don't know much technically about that. Which do you think would be better suited to take on boost?
If you was going to supercharge it, I would probably stick to the Ford.
Okay,
If I was going to put some kind of supercharger or something, I would go blow air.
yeah,
Because it's got huge ports.
uh-huh,
Yeah, and a lot bigger ports than Chevy does.
okay,
And if he says, if you're going to do that, you're going to spend some money
yeah,
on the supercharger, the turbocharger, whatever you're doing there with the intake and stuff. And I was just up to my friend's house the other day, and he had an intake manifold, I think for 4 carburetors,
okay,
and they're going to put it on a Cleveland motor. I think it's in a Pantera.
oh yeah,
And then somebody made this intake manifold, made it, out of where they weld up plates, pieces of aluminum, and make this whole manifold.
Yeah.
I think the intake manifold was like maybe $5,000.
wow,
Just for the intake.
yeah, wow,
And you're going to put it on this, some other carburetors laid down so you can get the hood down and on a Pantera.
yeah, wow,
Yeah. But so expect to spend some money.
okay.
A lot more than you would on a Chevrolet.
Now, we've got a couple questions. We talked about how, and it's kind of, you have to understand the whole story, but we did a video about GM's worst transmission. And that was the 400.
Yeah.
But it was just the beginning of the 400.
That's right.
So we got to give context there. So people have their own votes for the worst transmission, okay?
Okay.
So-
there could be some more in there.
There might be a few more. So Jim has one. He says, the Slim Jim Jetaway.
Yes. Slim, that was by far the worst thing they ever did.
Okay.
But they had a reason for that, for low floorboard clearance.
Okay.
That's what they were getting in this compact car. They were getting in the compact series car.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was all about making it small,
Yes.
not robust.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there you go, Jim. So he said Ed would know what I'm talking about, and you do, of
Yeah.
course. All right, well, the next one came from Wayne. See, everybody's got their vote. He says, I think the 200 R4 was the worst transmission. Do you remember the
200 R4.
Yeah.
We talked to a guy yesterday. I have a friend of mine who has a 200 R4 and a 500-inch Cadillac motor and a 58 Pontiac. 2-door sedan. He's had it in there forever, and he drives it everywhere, to California, wherever he goes, because
Really?
it has the overdrive. But you have to do changes the clutches, some billet clutches and billet drums in it. To get it. I think it had a lot of plastic parts in it.
Uh-huh.
Maybe the piston drum was even plastic, or something weird about those. I think I have one over here for a Chevrolet, a 200 R4 but they're rare. You don't see them very often.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I thought I remember someone saying they were designed for a little Chevy Chevette, but they ended
Well,
up
they
putting
were, I think, I don't know what they got, like Malibu again.
Yeah,
And I think Camaro had them.
okay.
82 Camaro pace car had a 200 R4.
Really?
Yes. And that was that 305 with the 2 throttle bodies. Mm-hmm. I think that car. And we have one of those cars. I have an 82 pace car.
Right,
But
okay.
I think it has a 700R now in it. And it has a 350 motor in it, but I have all the fuel injection parts all right back in the shelf.
Okay.
If I would want to put a 305 back in it.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some good ones. How do you adjust a turbo 350 if it shifts too hard from first to second?
Put the springs back in it.
Okay.
Because you leave the spring on the side, and that's second gear. The side cushion, so it's easy to take that cup off there. And the spring in there was a big spring, big heavy one. And that's that cushion in there. And then and the spring and the valve body was high gear.
Okay.
And we just left both springs out, and then the one on the side, I put a piece of electric conduit, half-inch conduit pipe in it, about 2¼ inches long, and put it in and spaced that cylinder, that piston, so it didn't go back and forth on it, but just blocked it. It was full of oil, and that made second gear shift hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if
I hope the guy didn't put a pin in the valve body. We could put a cotter pin in the boost valve.
Okay.
Hold the boost valve open, put it in there, and that car was squeal like a 55 Chevy with that turbo 350 and small. It'll squeal the tires going into second gear.
Okay.
But it's hard on U-joints and stuff.
Yeah, right, right.
But if he did do that, you have to find that out. If the guy put a block, like a cotter pin or something, in that boost valve in the valve body. So he needs to talk to somebody in your area that knows about those
Yeah.
tricks. Like, don't try to do it yourself.
Yeah, that sounds pretty,
But it's easy to put the spring back in for second gear.
okay.
Yeah.
So if that's what he did, then it's easy. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty easy to fix second. And high gear, I like high gear to be shifted a little hard when you're up to 45, 50 miles an hour and accelerating, and you need that shift gear so it don't slip the transmission.
Right.
So I like high gear to be a little stiffer.
You don't mind buying a U-joint once in a while, right?
I don't mind, every 50,000 miles, I don't mind that.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, Eric said, Eric was having trouble with his Chevy 350, and he was having trouble adjusting the lifters. And it rained and water got in the engine. I guess who knows how, but
Left
somehow
it out in the rain.
it was out in the rain
With the hood off.
with the hood off.
Okay.
And he still tried to start it, and after he ran it for a few minutes, he realized the lifters were now pressuring perfectly.
Were adjusted perfectly.
Yeah, they were all of a sudden working good.
Well, if you got the water out of them,
Yeah.
you probably got oil back in there. Why wouldn't they work perfect?
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if he thought he had water in the lifters.
Maybe that's what he's thinking.
I don't understand. Evidently, he's got, if it runs perfect,
Yeah.
good.
Just be happy.
He's all done.
Right.
Time for coffee.
There you go. Sometimes it's a coincidence, and
Yeah,
you
sometimes things work out.
take it and it gets all good. All right, we have another vote for the worst transmission,
Okay.
a different one. I like how they're all very different. The next one is the air-cooled Turbo Hydro 250.
No. We have a Power Glide over there.
Yeah.
It has holes in the bell housing,
Yeah.
and there's no tranny cooler on it.
Okay.
You
So that's air-cooled.
You just let the torque converter, and I enjoy, or encourage people to leave that front tin plate off the torque converter,
Okay.
the starter cover. Now, all that does is keep the rain and a few rocks and stuff off the torque converter, but the torque converter is going around 3,000 RPMs. It's not going to collect much rocks or not much dirt or water.
Okay.
It's going to collect on if you splash a little bit in that converter.
Okay.
But I like the air going in there and blowing around. Even I'd like to take the bottom bolts and put a little scoop so far, so it scoops more air
Oh, you're.
on those two little bolts. Scoops more air when you go down the road and cool that torque converter off.
Oh, okay.
And we're on the West Coast, and he may be on the East Coast. Who knows what they did on the East Coast?
That's right. John has a question. If I had a lockup 350 built with a shift kit, and it shifts out of low right away at 5 miles an hour at low RPM, and it's late getting into third, it also downshifts into second if I get anything below 35 miles per hour. What's going on with that thing?
350 Chevy lockup?
Yeah, it's a turbo 350.
350, the lockup's got nothing to do. You don't have to hook up the lockup at all. That's electric.
Okay.
All that does is lock the oil in a converter.
Mostly staying in second gear for some reason. Like after 5 miles an hour, it's already in second gear. And then as soon as he slows down from high gear, it jumps back to second again.
Well, there's something wrong with the valve body there.
Is that right?
It's got nothing to do with the electronics part of it, or the lockup or anything.
Okay.
He's got some valve. That sounds like second, third valve sticking.
Ah,
So it's about halfway into third. When you get any chance at all, it jumps back into second.
yep. Okay.
He's got a valve body problem as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that sounds right.
He's got some sticky valves in there. Now, I go to the transmission shop over here, and it's kind of discouraging. And it looks like a pharmacy.
Okay.
Yes, I'm serious.
Okay.
And then they have this bottle of additive for this Ford transmission. one for the Dodge transmission, one for the Chevy transmission, a different one for something else, and for this other 700R, a different valve can of additive.
Okay.
So I don't know what that's all about. Whether the additives are keep the stick for all. I mean, he's got several bottles, and
Yeah.
you can buy one for whatever car you have, instead of just putting one can of STP in the whole thing.
Yeah, so it must be the different transmissions have just a little different preference for
Something.
friction or something.
Yeah, something the way they're made.
Yeah.
Whether the valve body is aluminum and it expands.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
It expands or contracts, and the steel valves that go back and forth, and a steel valve, maybe aluminum valves. I know
Right.
the aluminum valves sometimes wear out because some of those valves will go back and forth all the time. Pretty soon the bores wore out. The valves just slopping around.
Oh.
I was going across the street to the transmission shop the other day. He's got a whole fixture. He's got a whole thing where he drills that out and puts an oversized valve in it,
Really?
in the valve body. He says it fixes all those problems. So it's a little bit more than I'm used to, but I go over there and see what he's doing with all the electronic transmissions.
Yeah. Huh.
So
Interesting.
they have a bunch of that stuff, and you better keep track of it and know what you're doing. Just take one of those apart. But he has some sticky valves as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
It's got nothing to do with electronic, as
All
far
right.
as I know.
Well, John, hopefully that helps you
I
out.
hope it helps, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's see.
You might try that additive, some kind of additive, to lubricate those valves. I know they're not dirty.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any dirt or gravel on the transmission.
Right. Right.
But something about expansion and stuff and keep them so they lubricate more. I don't know.
Back when we were in your little museum area back there, someone noticed some Stewart-Warner gauges. Do you have original Stewart-Warner gauges back there?
I do have over here in the rack. I think.
Oh, on the rack back there on the shelf.
Yeah.
What is that about? Where did you
It
get
was a
those?
display for an auto parts store.
Okay,
They had a whole display of Stewart-Warner gauges.
I see.
Yeah.
And so you ended up with it.
I ended up with a lot of stuff. I don't know where it came from.
Why would some engines be more ready to be supercharged than others?
A lower cubic inch engine,
Yeah.
and they're supercharging it.
Yep.
Well, I discourage that.
Okay.
So I really, some of these new, like the Ford motors, and they have trouble with them. I see sometimes they recall them. They take a little V6 motor and put a turbocharger on it.
Or two turbos.
There are two turbos. It's got a little bitty skinny rod bearing.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to put 14-to-1 compression in it. And it's supposed to be lucky to have 8-to-1 compression.
Right.
And it won't put out any horsepower at all. So they got the little motor that weighs nothing as far as weight
Yeah.
to try to get gas mileage out of this Bronco, brand new Bronco.
Yeah.
So they put a couple of turbochargers on it and short-lived it. Mm-hmm. Anytime as you get something that's your supercharger, if you don't have any kind of control over it, of course it's going to put out some horsepower if you wind the motor up.
Okay.
The more you wind the motor up, it's harder on the rod bearing, main bearings, and everything. And short-live it by half.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get 300,000 miles out of it.
Right.
You're
So-
lucky to get 50,000 out of it.
So a supercharged 6.2,
Yeah.
probably going to wear out faster than a Cadillac 500.
Oh, much more.
Yeah.
The Cadillac would take a little bit of supercharging and be extremely strong.
Yeah.
You know, he's strong already.
Yeah.
Huge torque. You put a little supercharger on it, a little bit, and it's going to double that horsepower.
Wow.
And it's going to spin the wheels.
Yeah. Have you
Nobody
seen?
wants to spin the wheels going on the road 70 miles an hour and gas it and spin the wheels.
Yeah.
That's senseless,
Yeah.
maybe,
Or fun,
or fun, yeah.
as long as you're ready for it,
I
right?
talked to a guy yesterday, he says, that motor going on the road, he says, that was a Chevelle. He says that it's 60 miles an hour if you just stood on it and spin the wheels. He says, that was a lot of fun.
Right.
I think it was a guy from Florida or someplace. Visited with him the other day.
That's good. Alan is saying, I've got an intermittent transmission leak on my 81 Camaro with the Turbo Hydro 350. It shifts fine, no problem with the shifting. The car doesn't leak that I can find while it's running and driving, but if it sits in the garage for just a few days, fluid leaks out, leaving a puddle. I have replaced the seals, the transmission pan gasket, and the vent is clear. It doesn't seem to leak if it's driven daily, but as soon as I let it sit, it starts leaking. Any ideas for that?
Of course.
Okay.
Because the torque converter drains down.
Ah.
Let's just say a couple of days, the torque converter all drains down. So and it raises the oil level in the transmission by an inch. And it comes out most of the time, it's the filler spout on the dipstick.
No kidding.
O-ring on the filler spout.
The O-ring,
On
yeah.
the tube, yeah. That's about 90% of them. Sometimes, but not very rare, it wouldn't leak, is the shift seal on the side of the transmission, where your shift lever goes in.
Yep.
Got a little steel shield, and you can take that 9/16 inch to take that shifter lever off and take an ice pick and dig that seal out of there. It's fairly easy to put another one in the side of the transmission. You don't have to take the transmission apart.
Okay.
On the other side, it's basically the dipstick tube.
Wow.
It's got an O-ring on it. You need to put a new O-ring on it and put some silicone on it and put it back in there again. And also, your shift cable's right there too. So that's easy to pull up and unhook. You can do that without taking the transmission apart. Unhook a little S hook in it. Take the cable off and change the O-ring on it or the seal. And put a little silicone on it, and that will probably fix your leak. But it's without a doubt, it's the dipstick tube seal or the shift cable, and they're right next to one another.
Wow. There could be two things, and they're both inexpensive to fix.
Yeah, both inexpensive. You don't have to take the transmission out or do anything. Yeah.
Wow.
They're easy to do.
Wow, good job, Ed. I like that.
Yeah.
That is perfect. Do you know anyone that would like to bring a Pete Jackson fuel injection back into production?
No.
No? Okay.
It was a good injection,
It was good.
but just that it
Well,
cost,
everybody's moved on, I guess?
just moved on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tom is asking, which oil pump would you use for a hot small block Chevy streetcar with a 7-quart oil pan? High volume or stock oil pump?
High volume. With a 7-quart pan, you can run a high volume pump,
Okay,
not necessarily high pressure.
right.
There's two different things there. In a high volume pump, you can make pressure whatever you want by changing the spring.
Yeah, okay,
Do whatever you want there.
okay.
But if you have, and a high volume pump's got a bigger screen on it too, bigger diameter pipe and bigger screen.
Okay,
And sometimes you always weld the screen on the pump too, so it don't come off.
okay.
But as long as you have the bigger pan,
Yeah,
yeah, and then you can run a high volume pump.
okay, very good. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there, Ed.
Okay.
Thank you for taking the time. Everybody's so appreciative of you sharing your
Yeah, good.
thoughts, your wisdom. I think you might have helped some people today.
Okay. I think so. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's good. Thank
right,
you guys. And by the way, if any of you know about hyping, there's a thing now. If you're watching us on a mobile phone, if you have YouTube on your phone, there's a way you can swipe on the screen and hype our videos, and that would help us out. So if you want to hype it up, we appreciate you hyping up our videos and help us out.
Okay.